Hello, my name is Eric Lampere. I play Crow in The Thing with Feathers. It's based on a book by Max Porter and it's subsequently directed by Dylan Southern, starring Benedict Cumberbatch. And now that it's finished its run in the cinemas, I wanted to share some behind the scenes images and stories with you. How did I get the job? Well, I was hitchhiking in the United States when I got a phone call from my agent. She told me that there was a role that would be quite physical and would demand some shadow work. And so basically she was hinting at me to stop gallivanting around the United States like some Mark Twain character and get your ass back to Europe. I flew back to France, stay with my mum for a bit, and then a few days later I got a request to do a self-tape. So I bought Max's book, Grief is the Thing with Feathers, and I read it, and it's a beautiful story. Genuinely, highly recommend it. You can read it in like an afternoon. It's quite short, but it packs a lot. And then I was sent a few pages of the script, and then I performed by interpretation of what I thought Crow could be. It's your audition, right? So there's no rules as to how you should do it. My self-tape was quite long, actually, because I sort of talked out loud ideas of what I could do if I got the job.
Crow will just happen as it's being performed. But the costume, for example, do I even have hands to play with? Is it just wings that I just thrill?
I was subsequently invited to London to perform in front of the casting director, Shaheen Baig, and the director, Dylan Thomas. Dylan Southern. Dylan Thomas is a poet, isn't it? Is Dylan Thomas the one that goes, "Do not go gentle into that good night"? It is do not go gentle into that good night. What's it called? Is that what the title is? Oh, that is the title as well. As I was saying, I did an audition in front of Shaheen Baig and Dylan Southern, and I basically spent all my money I had left for a flight, which is always a little scary and exciting because, you know, I'm investing in myself, but being an actor sometimes feels like you're also gambling with your life, which, in all fairness, is probably what we're all doing. But yeah, I spent all my money on a flight, and then a few days later they said I got the job, which was awesome. And it's always hard to know what variable, what small reason swayed their decision, right? When I got the role for Loz in Amsterdam, aka Sterner Express, it was between me and another actor, and I asked the directors, I was like, why did you choose me over the other guy? Like, you know, I was intrigued to know about what it was in my craft that sort of swayed them to choose me. And they said, oh, you were both talented, but we could imagine having a pint with you after work. Which kind of blew me away. And in a way it makes sense, right? Because if you're going to be working for weeks cooped up in a studio, you want to make sure that, yeah, the person has talent, but you want to make sure that, you know, they're fun to hang around with, that it's going to be a pleasant time, which obviously makes sense. But I was like, wow, okay, you know, when people decide who's going to get a role, it isn't just about technique, it isn't just about talent, it's about, you know, is he going to be fun to be with? That was amazing. That was an amazing lesson. Anyway, who knows why they chose me, but I remember in the audition sharing with them a little about my story, of my event with memory loss and my dip into the river Lethe. Is it Lethe? Lethe or Lethe? You know the river in Greek mythology where you lose all your memories. Anyway, I said to Dylan, whether you hire me for the role of Crow or not, I am Crow. As in, I felt such a kinship with journeying into the valley of death and back that, you know, I felt a kindred spirit with Crow. Still do. The costume, okay, so it was inspired by sculptor Why am I struggling with names today? Nicola Hicks, MBE, member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. Her sculptures, the look is like, it's almost like ink melting in front of you. It's dark and it's, what's the word I'm looking for? Not prehistoric. Primal? Yeah, there's something sort of primal about her work. And then it was created by Connor O'Sullivan from Creatures Inc. and Tara Zafar, who together and their team built the costume around me. You know, it felt like, you know when like a Power Ranger or something just activate and the costume just gets added on. That was me, but instead of, you know, a cut scene where they transform into a superpower, it took weeks. It took weeks to build this thing around me. And both Connor and Tara have such an excellent catalogue of movies that they've worked on. Like Connor, he did Batman, Dark Knight, Prometheus, Alien Covenant. He did a bunch of Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, X-Men. Tara, she did the Batman, the Marvel, Star Wars films. She was the head of the costume department for the London Olympics 2012, which is so cool. Like she did the Spice Girls and everything, you know. And so I was so grateful to be working with such an excellent team. It was amazing. Because it was almost, you know, a real juxtaposition between where I was only a few weeks before. And so I was not only grateful for this little pickup in my life, but also just, there's nothing better than collaborating with people that are talented and that love doing the thing that they love. It's mesmerizing to watch, you know, the way Connor and Tara were talking about the costume and just the little detail. And I love that. I love watching someone love their thing. That's awesome. Crow was an interesting character to play because it was acting. Like, sometimes I have to say it like as if I'm convincing myself. It was acting. I am an actor. Believe me. Someone please believe me. The reason I sort of joke around about that is because obviously my entire body was covered, my face was covered, my voice ended up being done by someone else. So it's a strange gig. So it's a variation of acting. It's actually specifically it's called creature work because you're a creature.
You've got that. Well done, everyone.
What I was doing in the self-tape and the audition became so different to the final product because I was on stilts. The head was so heavy. Heavy is the head that wears the crow. The head was so heavy because there was a bunch of animatronics inside the head, and it was all anchored on my nose, which I had to use to like sort of turn the head. That was basically guiding the entire head. There was a man called Adam who controlled all the animatronics, and so inside my head I could hear like it was it was quite weird. And yet the head was so heavy that technically production were limited by how long I was allowed to be in a costume for health and safety reasons. But some days we were running out of time, and so I chose to push through because we needed to get the shot. You know, sometimes I'll be like, Dylan, like, how long have we got? And he'd be like, not long. And so they never pressured me to do it because, you know, because they could see that the costume was really painful to wear. So if I needed a break, I could easily communicate that, and that was cool. But sometimes just the job needed to be done, and so I would step up. Basically, the choice was, do I become an actor that complains about the working conditions, which granted sometimes needs to be done, depending on the production. But luckily this team were an absolute joy to work with. So either I complain or I take responsibility for my role, and that's what I did. despite the fact that my neck was on fire, my nose was aching so much just from the pressure of the head resting on it. I was in so much pain for the entire time, but luckily the creature team were very supportive. Literally, it was like playing Crow was it was like being a Formula One driver who would do a lap of his race, and I did a lap of my scene, and then suddenly I'd go back to the pit stop where they would, do everything that needed to be done. They'd run a cooling fan in the gaps. Someone held the beak just so I could rest my head inside the head. And then I'd go back on set to do another lap.
And Eric Lampert, this incredible physical actor, was wearing that weight on his head and on stilts to give it this otherworldly height and presence in these very small domestic environments, because he just pushes himself in there like Grief does. And he was extraordinary. And then he was we always wanted David Thewlis to do the voice, who does provide the voice for Crow, which is the all-encompassing presence of him in the film. But we hadn't secured him at the time, but Eric knew about it and did his best David Thewlis impression. So I'm acting with a man who's about sort of 8 feet tall with a crow head going, and talking like David Thewlis, like Manchester, it was just...
There was one scene that was so taxing. At one moment, I began to hyperventilate, which was, again, a fascinating experience because I felt trapped. Suddenly, I felt trapped in this thing. Like, I kept thinking, if suddenly, the zombie apocalypse starts, I'm f***ed, because it would take about 5 people to get me out of the costume. If suddenly, all the people around me died, I'd be stuck inside the costume. There'd be no way I could take it off myself, which is, it's slightly frightening. I mean, luckily no one suddenly died and became zombies, so that's good. But that was strangely frightening. There was a little element of claustrophobia to realise that I am trapped in this costume and need other people to get me out. Get me out of here! It's like I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, but instead of being in a jungle, it's just we're all inside animatronic birds. So I began to hyperventilate, and the entire team then gathered around me. A couple of people were required to take the head off, and I emerged out of the darkness, finally able to breathe, crying, like of so much pain. And then Benedict comes out to compliment me on the scene, which was very nice, right? But he comes out and he sees me covered in tears and snot, and he's like, good stuff, I'll see you later. So that was quite fun. I fell once, which is not bad, actually. It was... Basically, I was on stilts and it was in the darkness, so I couldn't really see where I was going. And there was a cable for the lights that my toe just grabbed onto the cable, and the entire thing just like in slow motion. And all I kept thinking was protect the beak, because I think we had 3 heads for Crow, but only one of them had the animatronics, and so all I kept thinking was, oh my god, I can't fall on the beak. And it's this top heavy thing. So anyway, I'm on the floor and basically I'm on stilts. There was no way for me to get myself up. It required 5 people to pull me up. I felt so useless. Can you all get me out of here, please? That was fun. Yeah, I couldn't see anything in the head. But only glimpses of feet through the dark mesh, right? So, some days were disorienting. Like, there's one scene where I had to walk through the snow, and so because there was no frame of reference, it was all just white through the dark mesh, I couldn't see anything. That was a difficult time. The whole thing was surreal. Like, I was guiding a head that was slightly ahead of me, right? So I knew that Crow's eyes were around here. And so I had to my head was here, as always, right? My head was here, but my thoughts, my identity, Crow, was around here. All right? So it was really strange to have to play with someone who was smaller than me, and the only way for me to know where they were was because through the mesh, I could somehow briefly see where their feet were. And so knowing where their feet was, I could sort of guess where their head was, which was just slightly higher than their feet, right? Like if their feet are here, their head's not going to be over there, right? So I sort of had to like work it out, that was a really fun game. I did say to Benedict, I was like, how quickly can you move out of the way in case the beak suddenly just... So that was fun. But yeah, I had to be careful. The amount of time that the beak would just hit someone's face. It was good fun. How did I prepare for the role? Well, I read, obviously, Max Porter's book a few times, and I also read Ted Hughes's Crow, which is what the sort of entire story is based on, because in the book, the dad is not an illustrator. He is essentially a Ted Hughes scholar. So he knows a lot about the poetry of Ted Hughes. And that's how essentially Crow emerges out of the dad's imagination in this book. The movie took slight liberties because it's more visually interesting just to see sort of doodles and sketches and drawings and stuff. So that's the slight difference between book to movie. If you ever get a chance to see my script, it was covered in sketches and carved with crow-like cussing. And I gave it to Dylan as a sort of gift. You're welcome. You're welcome. Here's a gift.
When I met Eric, it was really amazing because I can see him being assembled. I can see bits of Crow hanging around the place like a Leonard Baskin drawing pulled apart and left around. It's beautiful. And then I sort of went over and we said hello, and he said, "I hope you don't mind. I want to show you my script." Did you see it?
I mean, it's a work of genius.
He's annotated it, drawn all over it. Yeah. He's got quotes from the book and from elsewhere. He really lived it.
Oh, he did his work. He was very, very invested.
Wonderful.
Very invested. And physically, probably the toughest gig of all of us, I think. Really extraordinary commitment.
But yeah, I gave him my script, which was just covered in drawings. And basically, I took the role as seriously as possible, despite being so limited to what I could do. Because I love this. I love being an actor. I love taking it as seriously as possible, despite it being a playful endeavor. Playfully serious and seriously playful. So important. I even went to the park to just stare at crows, just to see how they move.
I am one of you now. I am the most powerful method actor in the world. I'm going to be you in 2 months. Oh, it's fun. Acting's fun. You go a little bit crazy because you have to be in the mind of the character sometimes. And I'm going to be in the mind of one of these. I'm playing a crow.
Benedict and I had one rehearsal together before the film began shooting. And I had my own interpretation of what Crow sounded like, right? Because I'd actually been playing with a character like that before I even heard about the movie. I was playing with this sort of catonic character, a Hades-like creature within me, which I really, like I said, I could really feel the pain of the ones that live in the underworld. And anyway, what was I saying? So I had a particular voice for Crow, and so in the rehearsal, Benedict knew that they were always going to ask David Thewlis to do the voice, and so after the day's rehearsal, Benedict said, "Look, do one version for you where you do it in your voice as Crow, but then I'm going to probably need one where you stay silent because I'm going to need to hear David Thewlis, right? Because David he's got a particular cadence, the way he uses his words, that rhythm, right? There's a particular David Thewlis tone."
Was I bored? No, I wasn't fucking bored. I'm never bored. That's the trouble with everybody. You're all so bored. You've had nature explain to you and you're bored with it.
I was like, yeah, no worries. And because I had 1 week between that rehearsal and my first day on set, I decided to work with a voice coach to sound as much as possible like David Thewlis. I was thinking of the movie Naked by Mike Leigh. In fact, that's what Dylan suggested, because he always had that particular, not just David Thewlis' voice, but almost that character of his, that sort of dirty northern, like that sort of voice. He wanted to have him. And I also watched a bunch of Fargo, season 3 Fargo. And God, it's been a long time since I've actually done it. Oh yeah. God, it's wild to think that this job was 2 years ago. But 2 years ago, I did actually a pretty good David Thewlis impression, and so I thought I'd do that because it's the professional thing to do. It felt like the professional thing to do, and what was awesome was that I basically did that for the entire shoot. I voiced the whole thing, and secretly I was thinking, if I do a really good job, then I'll get the role. You know, I'm cheaper than David, so I thought maybe I could steal the role. But no, production still decided to go someone that will sell more tickets than me, which, fair enough, actually. What was it like working with Benedict Cumberbatch? It was really fun, you know, for multiple reasons. One, watching someone that loves doing the thing that they love doing and doing it as best as possible is always, you know, a pleasure. To watch him transform into Dad, you know, who had to so often carry so much weight and you know, tears that came out would have to be believable and real, right? And so to watch him get into that state of mind and perform Dad and honour Dad, right? Honour the story that needs to be told, and then just sort of breathe it all out, and then just go back home to his family and just be able to really separate the two things was a pleasure to watch. And there was one moment for me that felt really special because, you know, I am maybe still an up-and-coming actor. Like, it's hard to quantify, right? It's hard to know where actors are. Like, I feel successful, and yet simultaneously I'm still hoping for the next job. Like, I don't know when the next job is going to come. So I am not at a position in my career where the work is just snowballing. Like, I'm still waiting for the next job. And so it feels good to be collaborating with people that are, like, on a next level. I think Benedict's been nominated twice for an Oscar, right? Like, that's wild for me. It's amazing. And so there was a moment, there was a scene. It was the dancing scene where Crow sort of is like a shaman-like trickster spirit that takes over Dad because Dad is so sad, and he sort of we dance together. And before every shoot, Dylan would just explain what he wanted us to do and where the camera would be positioned, etc., etc. And at one moment, he said, okay, Dad's going to be in the middle, the camera's going to be circling Dad, and then Crow's going to be outside of the camera, circling the other way around. And I don't often need to voice, you know, an idea just because the entire team were amazing. It was such an easy, wonderful, brilliant job. But this one time, I was like, oh, may I? Can I please suggest something, please? I suggested that Crow should actually be inside the circle with Dad, because that was the moment in the script where Dad finally embraced Crow. It's like Crow was now finally allowed in his bubble. And therefore, actually, the audience needs to be outside of the circle, and Crow and Dad need to be inside. I can't remember exactly how I verbalized it, but my point was emotional and psychological. It was for the story. And Benedict said, you know what, he's right. And, you know, I was trying to be professional. Yes, yes, quite, yes. But inside it, I was like, hey, yes! Oh, it's like I know what I'm talking about. Which was a nice feeling, right? But I suppose what was strange is because Crow is creature work, it's not like, you know, and cut, you know, it's not like when at the end of the scene we can then go, whew, yeah, that was really good. Okay, so maybe we could do this or that or this. Crow was so heavy that as soon as the scene was stopped, I had to just rest somewhere. Like the creature team would like hold the beak, and they would just hold me, and I just I'd be in so much pain. So it was very difficult to have this moment of like two colleagues, you know, just hanging out. And then when the day was finished, I would go off to have everything removed. That we'd always sort of miss each other. So we'd only really see each other on set, and I never even got to see him because I was just covered head to toe in the skin suit of a crow. So it was it was an interesting, weird experience. Advice for actors who want to do creature work. Firstly, take care of your body. It's your most important tool. You know, you can have hundreds of problems, but as soon as you're sick, the only problem you have is your health, right? So take good care of your body. And that's not just for creature work. I think that's just literally for the rest of your life, for everyone. Communicate your needs, okay? But don't be a diva. So voicing what you need to do your job properly is being professional. It's not you going, oh, can I, please? No, you're an actor. Like, if there is something that you need to do the best job possible, make sure you voice that. But remember that you are one of many. It's a collaboration, you know, teamwork makes the dream work. And so I think actors can sometimes lose their humbleness. Is that a word, humbleness? Because, especially let's say in America, where like, oh, talent walking through, talent is here, and we are so nurtured and taken care of that it can feel like suddenly the ego can go, oh yes, I deserve all of this pleasure. It's very easy to forget that you're just one of many, and so just make sure that when you voice what you need, that you do so in a collaborative manner and not as like, I'm the star. And I think most importantly, communicate when something hurts or needs adjustment, but don't complain. So the team that create the costume around you and helping you breathe in it, they can't guess if something needs adjusting, right? So let them know, and they'll find a way to fix it or make you comfortable so that you can give a great performance. Creature work is notoriously difficult because of uncomfortable costumes and awkward positions for long periods of time. So, yeah, that's the work. But if you complain constantly, word of mouth will not be your friend. You know, if you suddenly have an outburst, you know, like everyone is allowed to just struggle. But if moaning is your constant way of communicating, no one's going to want to work with you. And creature work, because of the difficulty, you have to be resilient and you have to love it, and you have to be okay feeling like a prop. Like there was a couple of times that the actor in me did struggle because I felt so much like a prop, like just go in that corner and just do that move, you know, like a sort of puppet almost. And that felt weird, but that's okay. You know, some scenes were better than others to perform and to play. Will I do more creature work? I hope so. Connor O'Sullivan, the guy that runs Creatures Inc., at one moment he said that it was obvious that there's an actor inside the crow costume. And I asked him what he meant by that. Basically, often they get stuntmen to do creature work, right? Because your face is covered, sometimes your body, many times you might not even need your voice. You'll often have to be put in particular weird positions to do a particular movement for a long time. So production might hire a stuntman, maybe for financial reasons, maybe it's because they can handle physical strain longer and better. I mean, that's what they're trained for. So when I asked him what he meant by why it was obvious that there's an actor in the suit, he said that I was making choices with my movements that were clearly considered. I obviously knew the story and the script and what was demanded of the character, which seems like an obvious thing to do for an actor, as that's what we're trained for, right? Is to bring things to the table for the director to play with. We're trusted to bring a character to life, while stuntmen, for example, are usually told what they need to do. Stand there, do that. And therefore probably don't consider the character's motivation, or they might not feel comfortable to improvise. So anyway, all this to say that he told me he would consider me for more creature work, which is pretty cool. So fingers crossed for that. And hopefully, I think that word of mouth must have made what's the word I'm looking for? Oh man, the good word of mouth happened, I think, because I subsequently got an audition for Robert Eggers' next movie, Werewolf, to be the werewolf, right? And so I didn't get it, which is fine, because rejection is just part of the game of an actor. But it was pretty cool to have an audition immediately in front of the director. So normally you have to do a self-tape and then you have to do an audition, maybe 2 auditions before you even meet the director, right? This one, immediately I was invited to perform, to be werewolf in front of Robert Eggers. And that was really cool. It felt like I was leveling up. But it's also quite funny because it's simultaneously a pretty cool moment to go straight to auditioning in front of director. But also, if you don't get the job, it sometimes can feel like pointless. Not pointless, but there's basically a big difference between doing an audition and getting the job, because then you're a successful actor performing with a successful director to do a movie that will hit the screens internationally, and then you get a big paycheck, and that will translate to more work. And then not getting the job, so basically all you did was be a almost 40-year-old man pretending to be a big dog in front of another man. Arrgh. That one's sadder, right? Still cool, isn't it? Like, oh, wow, what, Eric, you got to perform in front of Robert Eggers? I did. Anything else come out of it? No, I was just a big dog. That's not what the werewolf does. That's an ape. No wonder I didn't get the job. Anyway, I thought that was some little stories. I thought I'd share some things. Thank you so much for watching, and I don't know, subscribe. Have you done that yet? Subscribe. Do that. All right. See you later. Oh gosh, I'm in so much pain. Check this out. I've got a heat patch because I hurt myself. I told you, look after your body.